Would I pick Paul Pogba in the Manchester United team? I wouldn't. But I don't think he's a great player. And United spend more money than everyone every summer. Every summer, without fail. And for me, I think I'd be looking to move him on.
Paul Pogba, now his national team manager, Didier Deschamps, has said, and I'll read you the quote, he's in a situation with his club where he cannot be happy, neither with his playing time nor with his positioning. He's not in his best period. He has had a series of injuries in the COVID, which has hit him quite hard. He needs to find his rhythm. With me, there's no such concern. When a player's in discomfort in his club, obviously he's happy to play for the France team. He'll tell me about his feelings, and as I know him very well, it will go in a positive direction. So Deschamps is happy because he's got an unhappy player coming up, and therefore he's happy joining up with France, where they put their arm around him, and they absolutely love him. But it's clear that he is not happy at Manchester United.
The fact we're still talking about what is Paul Pogba's best position when he's been at the club for 4 years, I think tells you that he's possibly never done well enough in any position or tactical setup that different managers have had at Manchester United, really. And for me, when I look at it now, would I pick Paul Pogba in the Manchester United team? I wouldn't. No, I think he's a huge name. He's come from a huge transfer fee. But I don't think he's a great player. I think when I say that, I've said it at different times on Monday Night Football, but people say he's won the World Cup, and I get that. I understand that. That's an argument to throw back at me, but I think he's been in our league. When he came in, I wanted him to have, well, I wouldn't say I wanted him, but I thought he may have the impact of what Lampard with Chelsea, what Stevie had with Liverpool, what Yaya Toure had with Man City. Those players drove their teams to titles, European cups. And when you come from Man United as the world transfer fee, and I know you could say the other players are not great or this manager or that, when you're that man who's seen as the one to take United to the next level, which United going to the next level now is getting back to winning titles and European cups, and people may say, oh, that's too much pressure to put on one man, but that's what we were almost told was coming. This package, most expensive player in the world, he can do everything in midfield. He's done it for Juventus, he's playing the Champions League final for them, and it just hasn't happened for him at Manchester United. And for me, I think I'd be looking to move him on.
Okay, so he's worked with two managers at Manchester United, Jose Mourinho, and they clearly didn't get on. And now Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. A lot of people have got doubts about whether Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's got the right credentials to be manager of a club the size of Manchester United. If he, are we not looking at that? Are you not looking at that and thinking, surely if he was with just say he was with his old manager at Juventus, or Deschamps took over at Manchester United, for example, would you not think he's got a better chance of doing well?
Maybe, but I can only think of myself, and if someone said to me, I could only play well because I had a certain manager, I'd be embarrassed. I would. I mean, people take credit at times, coaches and managers, for different players, maybe bringing them through, maybe having them at the peak, making it, a difference to them as player, maybe what position they put them in. But if I felt that my career would fall down because I never had a certain coach or manager, or would I have made it as a professional footballer if it wasn't for Steve Highway as a coach? Now, so many people help you in your career, but I look at myself and think, well, how well I did was down to me. And when I didn't play well, that was down to me. I wouldn't blame a coach. So if Pogba's, fans are saying, oh, well, Jose was too defensive, Ole's not a top-level manager, for me, I'm like, I'd be looking at myself. I really would, and I think he's played enough games for Manchester United. They've changed the system and his role in that team so often now to almost get him in the team. And I think finally, Ole, and I think rightly so, has said, no, I'm going to play 4-2-3-1. I'm going to play Fernandes as my creative player. And I've been on record, I do not believe Pogba and Fernandes can play in the same team. So we're going to play Fernandes, and I think he's been really good since he joined the club last January. I'd be looking to take my money for Pogba.
Okay, so let's go back to when you were playing under Rafa, okay? And at the start and first few years, everything's brilliant and it's going well, and you nearly win the league and you do win the Champions League. Then towards the end, when some players come in that probably aren't up to the standards required, it's not quite so brilliant. Surely you would look at the manager then. And I know what you're saying about you've got to look at yourself first. I get that totally. But Liverpool as a team weren't performing great, were they? But that's mainly because he brought in substandard players rather than anything to do with you, wasn't it? So surely Paul Pogba's got the right to look around and say, well, hang on a minute, is this defence good enough? Are these fullbacks good enough? Have we actually got the players that are at my level to go and succeed? When Fernandes signed and started playing well, I said that's a sign of respect to Paul Pogba, that they've finally signed somebody who's at his level, who's good enough to play alongside a World Cup winner like Paul Pogba.
No, I think the players you're talking about, midfielders, other players in the team, I think they could rightly look at Paul Pogba and say, what's he actually doing for us, really?
So he wouldn't look at Fred or McTominay and say, what's going on here?
Well, listen, we keep talking about Manchester United's players not having this player or being miles behind Man City and Liverpool. Man United spend more money than everyone every summer, without fail. They spent the most in January with Fernandes. I'm sure someone else come on. You go back to last season with Harry Maguire, the most expensive central defender. I mean, Luke Shaw was 30 million. That was about 4 years ago. I mean, that's about 50 now. You know, you've just mentioned Fred. He was 50 million. You know, so I have this debate with Gary a lot, and he talks a lot about, you know, Manchester United need to spend and bring more players in. But we say now he's not good enough or he's not good enough. Are we saying it when they sign? That's what I would say. Are we saying this about these when they sign? We're not saying the poor players when they sign. Now, don't get me wrong. You could then use that argument, are Manchester United getting enough out of them? Yeah, and that's when you maybe do question the manager. Is this squad as poor as what people say? But before you said when Liverpool weren't doing well towards the end, and I agree with you, as a player, you need the team to do well. It enhances your performance, and when the team doesn't do well, your performance drops. But I look at then Steven Gerrard in that role, not so much me. I'm a defender. I'm not going to change the game as such. But Steven Gerrard was still producing performances for Liverpool in those circumstances. Now, Pogba may not then take Manchester United to a league title or a European Cup, but we could say he's still the best player for United. He's driving them on. He's the standout man type of thing. And I don't think you can say that. And I don't think he's ever been fully committed to Manchester United. His agent's permanently talking about maybe moving him on. I think last season he was out for a long time. I'm not sure how serious the injury was, but I almost felt he was getting himself ready for the Euros, if I'm being totally honest. Obviously that didn't happen. That's next summer now. And at this moment he finds himself out the team, because when he's been in the team haven't functioned as well. And at this moment it looks like they're almost fitting him in. There was that diamond they were playing at, a couple of games ago, and I don't think Ollie's sold on that. And right now it feels like that's the only way he can get in the team, if he crams his team with central midfield players.
Hassan's a Man United fan. What do you want to say? You're on talkSPORT.
Hi, Adrian. Hi, Jamie. I just sort of wanted to agree with what Jamie was saying. Personally, I think the onus is on Paul Pogba. He should really be looking at that squad and thinking, why am I not in it if McTominay and Fred are playing? But the facts are his performances aren't at that level.
He's not playing very well, is he, Hassan? That's absolutely the truth. But then quite a number of Man United players aren't playing very well, but it always seems to be focused on Pogba.
Yeah, and I think that's for two reasons. One, mainly the price he was brought in for. I think the way the market and the way the media sort of go at players is to look at the transfer fee. And also, as well, it is what he's won. He is one of those players that can fall back on. He's won the World Cup. He's achieved in big games and big moments. But he doesn't seem to have done that for United.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Hassan. But what I want to say is, I know you're a Man United fan, I think it's really disrespectful, the way we always say, and it's Fred and McTominay in the midfield. And sometimes we think of central midfield players, they've got to be this Pogba, this name, this huge transfer fee. Look at the two best teams in the country now. You'd say Liverpool and Man City. Liverpool's midfielders, Jordan Henderson, Wijnaldum, and they're two players who are not players who get you off your seat. They're brilliant for what they do for Liverpool. And you look at the central midfield for Man City at the weekend. Now, okay, they've moved away from David Silva and De Bruyne as much in there, but it was Rodri and Gundogan. And at times when they don't do well, they're questioned. But they're not players who get you off your seat. Sometimes midfield players, central midfield players, they've got to sacrifice themselves for the team. That's the role, and that's why Pogba doesn't play there. Because he doesn't sacrifice himself for the team. He's everywhere but central midfield. So right now, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is looking at those two thinking, I can trust them. And that's a big thing for a manager. I think one of the big reasons why Pogba doesn't get in the team, or people maybe don't rate him, is because I think people watching, you can't quite trust him to what he's going to do. And those two players you can trust right now, McTominay and Fred. And central midfield players have always got to be there for the team. And I think as a manager, you've got to go to bed at night, seeing it with centre-backs and central midfield players knowing, I'm going to get a 7 out of 10 out of them every week. They don't have to go and win me the game, but I need to know what they're going to give me week in, week out. And with Paul Pogba, he's either 9 out of 10 or he's 4 out of 10. You never get 7 out of 10 with Pogba.
Alan's tweeted saying, agree with Jamie, in 4 years at United, I've never seen Pogba grab a game by the scruff of the neck in the way Lampard, Gerrard, Scholes used to, week in, week out. He lacks desire and hunger for the team. I'd move him on. United will flourish without him. I do remember him grabbing the Manchester derby by the neck. Remember they were losing and he scored 2 goals second half. That second 45 minutes, that to me was goal standard Pogba, but we haven't seen enough of that for sure.
But again, that's. I think people who are maybe critical of Pogba, no one's expecting that every game. That performance Pogba gave second half, and he got a couple of goals. You're expecting maybe could he do that 5 or 6 times a season? Steven Gerrard didn't do that every week. Lampard didn't. Yaya Toure didn't. That's the icing on the cake. What I'm saying again is, don't go from 9 out of 10 to 4 out of 10. Where's this over a 10-game period for any player? You'd want 6 or 7 out of 10s. I know what I'm getting. I get 1 bad game and I get 2 great games. 2 great games in 10 and a consistency for the rest of them where you're 7, maybe touching 8 out of 10, and the manager knows what you're going to give him, and now and again he gets a poor game. That's what top players give. It's not about being man of the match every game. I don't think anyone is asking that from Paul Pogba.
Speak to Paul, a United fan. What do you want to say, Paul?
I just think Paul Pogba's been around years now, and we keep saying, he's this big thing, but like, how many more years are we going to keep saying it for? Like, he's not up to it.
So you'd give up on him? You'd move him on?
Oh, at this time now, you're going to get money from the market, so I don't know, why not sell him now, before in a few years when he's not worth nothing?
That's the irony of this, though. Paul, I think a lot of United fans feel the same as you. Mark has just tweeted saying, Jamie, spot on about Pogba. Looked a great player when at Juve, but that player hasn't turned up yet. The impact Fernandes has had since signed was what was expected of Paul Pogba. The irony is, though, he has been terrific in the past, and he did cost a lot of money, and that's why people are looking at him. But as soon as he gets moved on, wherever he goes, he's probably going to be brilliant, isn't he? And it's going to look bad on Ollie and United.
I don't think it will look bad on them. I used to have this at Liverpool when we'd have players who would be brilliant for their international team, and then they'd come back to Liverpool and they'd be poor, and everyone would say, he's brilliant for his national team. When you're a player at a club or a supporter of a club, you don't really care what he does elsewhere. It's what he does for your club. And we had that with certain, I'm not going to name names, but certain players. I
was just going to say name names. Come on.
No, but what I mean is, someone would be fantastic for the national team, or they'd be fantastic at the club they come to, and then they'd move and do well, and someone would say, you've made a mistake. You haven't made a mistake. If Paul Pogba moves on and does really well, doesn't mean Man United have made a mistake. For whatever reason, it hasn't worked at Manchester United, and they have to do what's best for them, and that means getting as much money as they possibly can, and then replace them. For me, so I'm not a big one on that, where it's like if he goes somewhere else, sometimes maybe it's the Premier League, maybe it's the manager he's had, maybe it's Manchester United, I don't know, but it hasn't worked. And if I was a Man U fan or a player, I wouldn't be too worried or bothered if he went somewhere else and done well, and that made me feel we'd made a huge mistake. I mean, he's been there long enough.
Speak to Jason, he's a United fan. What do you want to say, Jace?
What I want to say is that if I was to say to you guys, Paul Pogba's last full season that he was fit and not injured for Man United, he was their top goal scorer with about 18 goals, and top assist in the Premier League team of the season, and in the top 5 goals, returns and assists players, like midfield players in the whole of Europe. What would we say?
I'll tell you what I'd say is I think it was, listen, I'm not just here to batter anything about Paul Pogba. He had a good season, no doubt. I think a lot of those goals were penalties. You could argue the same. Sorry, mate. But
that's what's said about Bruno when he scores penalties.
I was just about to say that.
Scores penalties. Yeah, everyone says it's all right. But what I would like to say is that when he was played in his preferred position, as a number 10, where Bruno's playing now, his last full fit season, he was in the Premier League team of the season. He had the most goals for Man United, most assists. Following season, he got injured. He came back after COVID, and he played well. He played well, holding. Bruno was playing in front. We did well. We clawed back the points. We finished third. This season starts. He gets the COVID. He hasn't been playing all the games, but his last full season in his preferred position, he was in the top 5 midfielders in the whole of Europe, in the Premier League team of the season.
Jason, let me pick you up on that, because that's... I think it's a great point. And it wasn't just... You're saying Premier League team of the season. Jamie, it was the PFA team of the season. So the professional footballers themselves thought Paul Pogba, this is the 2018-19 season, they thought he was the best for that position in the Premier League that year. That's the players saying that. So were they wrong?
Is Jason still there?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still there. And then the following year, he gets injured and he doesn't come back until after COVID.
You're taking my airtime here, Jason.
We've been through all that, Jason. What do you want to say to him, Jamie?
Sorry, Jason. What you said was his preferred position was number 10. And I agree in some ways that I think Pogba at his best needs to be close to the opposition's goal. I don't like him in central midfield. So he needs to play there, and that's what you've just said. And I've also said him and Fernandes can't play in the same team. So what you're saying is then you would play the both of them, or you would put Fernandes on the bench and play Paul Pogba?
No, I think the problem we have is we're playing two defensive midfielders. And the fact that we're playing that tells me that my thing is this. I love Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's a Man United legend, as far as I'm concerned, but he's not an elite manager. An elite manager does not... The only reason we play two holding midfielders is because we don't have defenders at the levels of what you used to play at, and Vidic and Rio. So we need to help them by putting two defensive midfielders, so we lose an attacking player. And the fact that Pogba was injured the season before and he hasn't done it as a full season, so we're putting Bruno there. But really, we should just have 2 8s and a 6.
Okay, well, that's maybe an argument people have made in terms of playing one holding player and two attacking players. When you're saying you're playing two defensive midfield players, you have to do that now, Manchester United, because it's been proven when Pogba's played in one of those positions against Crystal Palace and against Brighton, you got counter-attacks, and it was so open. We analysed it on Monday Night Football. Pogba can't play central midfield. You leave you two exposed. We highlighted that. We analysed that. In terms of playing Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba ahead of one sitting midfield, maybe the way Man City did with Pep Guardiola, and you had De Bruyne and Silva in those positions, we almost imagine or forget and think that Silva and De Bruyne just floated around the pitch and did what they wanted. Pep Guardiola doesn't accept that. He plays a positional game, which means you've got to be disciplined to stay in your position. Fernandes and Pogba are not disciplined. Probably the two of the most undisciplined players you'll find in the Premier League. Now, you could maybe carry one. You can't have the two of them in the same team. That's why I always go back to it. You can't play the two of them together, so it would be one or the other. If you're in the Pogba camp, okay, you play Pogba at number 10, but then you can't play Fernandes.